Kuma is now a seraphim. In today's video, I'm just going to be talking about why this is the case and everything we got in the last chapter and the story of One Piece that implies that he has become a seraphim, because this is going to be an important part of this arc. Now, obviously, if you want to watch this video, you should ideally be up to date, and being up to date is being where I've put in the description of this video for both anime watchers and manga readers. But if you're up to date, you just don't care, all that good stuff, let's get into it. Kuma is a seraphim, and I don't mean like all the other PXs like that are based off of Kuma. I don't mean like the seraphim that's like Hancock and Mihawk. I mean Kuma, the actual person, the person who we know, the way he thinks, the original person is a seraphim. That's what I mean. Now, the beginning of this video starts with an idea that, like, it seems weird, right? That for the longest time we've argued over Kuma, being able to come back, Kuma being too far gone, and it's something that's gone back and forth for an unnervingly long amount of time. Because if it was as simple as just being gone, then Kuma would be gone the way everyone else who's a pacifista is gone. I think it was mentioned back in Sabaody that all the pacifistas are not just robots, right? They are the same, almost the same thing as Kuma, right? Then they speculate that they're probably like prisoners who have been, used in these experiments, and based off of Kuma, they just made them look a bit more like him so that they all, look the same. But essentially, all of them have a human component, and no one has ever wondered about those guys, but everyone has wondered about Kuma. Now, this could just be because he's a main character, but something about it just seems weird that even after 2 years, people are still asking the question, can we get Kuma back? And it'd be weird to me that Oda keeps bringing this up if this was not going anywhere. And in this arc, it might just be building up to this answer, this idea, this revelation, whatever you want to call it, that Kuma has been transformed into a seraphim. Now, how did I make this jump in logic that from, the pacifista, can we get him back from there, that he's now a seraphim? Good question. But before we answer that question, we have to look at the fact that, CP0 is bringing him back now, right? CP0 is bringing him back as a problem child. Of course, they have another mission to do when they get back, but they're bringing Kuma back as this problem child, which basically implies that something about Kuma is not quite right. The Kuma seraphim is not quite right. I don't know, like it probably means that it doesn't act the way they want it to. It's somehow defective and it needs some kind of maintenance or fixing. Now, normally for other characters in this world that would make sense, but for Vegapunk that does not make sense. The fact that Vegapunk has made a defective product. So far there have been so many things made by Vegapunk, and if you think about it, like even some of Vegapunk's like stuff that he calls defective, that he's left behind, that he's abandoned, clearly seem to all be functional. Right, he left the dragons on Punk Hazard, assumably because they were not useful. But those worked, for all intents and purposes, like real dragons would. Right, even the numbers, which are failed experiments, could be controlled and used as soldiers to fight. So how are they failures? Right, they may not be intelligent, but they can still be used for fighting for war. The idea of the dragon devil fruit that he left, right? Even that seems to work just fine. So the idea that Vegapunk has actually made something defective doesn't even make sense. The only person who's ever thought of something of Vegapunk's being defective is Vegapunk, not anyone else. So the idea that, this is a problem child that is defective, that it doesn't work right, is insane for someone else to say who's not Vegapunk. Right, which leads me to believe that there's probably something going on with this seraphim that is not quite the same, or that Vegapunk actually thinks is a success, but others would deem as a failure. And so, mixing the two ideas that Kuma could still be alive, is Kuma alive? Will he come back to us? With the idea of this problem child seraphim, makes me think that there's a possibility in this world, in this science of One Piece, that we have transferred the essence, the soul of a person from one body to another. Now, as crazy as this seems, it's been done before in the One Piece world. This is not the first time it's been talked about, but this is the first time we're talking about it in regards to science. Right, there's many ideas of transferring something from one person to the next. The biggest one being devil fruits. Devil fruits transfer from one body to the next body. The essence of a devil fruit leaves and enters another person. They also talk about two devil fruits being in a person, has a conflict with someone's soul. The idea of law switching people's personalities between their bodies. The idea of inherited will being transferred from one person to another. There's this idea of transferring from body to body in One Piece in many different ways, and this is just going to be the way that science can do that. So it's not as crazy to think as, maybe it would seem, but it's very interesting because now this opens up the doors to so many ideas, but it's also answers the question of why it's effective, because maybe just like the Germa and Sanji and everything that went on there's some kind of delayed awakening of Kuma with his seraphim form, right? So maybe he's not actually doing anything outright that Kuma would do, but there's this kind of like recognition, slow recognition coming. So maybe, the world government, as they are, they probably asked him to do some really messed up stuff as a seraphim, and maybe, coming back to his kind nature, he hasn't completely gone through with it, right? They asked him to kill these people, and then he defeats them, but doesn't actually kill them. So maybe something like that. And they think because he's actually kind of accomplishing, but not how they wanted to, he's actually a problem child. When it's just Kuma's kind nature, which was mentioned by, other characters in the One Piece world, coming back to him, along with, maybe some of his memories, personality traits, and all of that. But naturally, this brings up many issues because, how long would it take? Will he be the exact same? That's something I don't really know right now. But the idea that Kuma will be coming back, that's something that's very true. And what's really interesting about it is not only the idea that Kuma will return to the One Piece story, but a bit beyond that. Because, if this was actually a person in the real life, in our lives, it'd be very hard to be like, imagine if someone you knew and thought had died came back and they're like, hey, it's me, and you saw them as a 12-year-old kid again. It'd be really weird to accept that, they've transferred their brain into a different consciousness, right? It'd be really weird for the characters to accept that this is the real Kuma. And that is something very interestingly that was brought up in this chapter as well. The idea of what makes something real or fake. What makes something legitimate or not legitimate, right? What qualities does it have to be considered as real? Vegapunk brings this up as an age-old question that many people have asked, and according to Vegapunk, the matter is settled. And so for Vegapunk, probably the Kuma that exists now that will awaken in a seraphim body is the real Kuma. But it's up to the characters, the main characters and Bonnie to accept or deny the real Kuma as he comes back. It's also up to the viewers, us to decide, is this going to be the Kuma? Is this the real Kuma? Or are we going to take this as like a new version of Kuma, right? What makes something real or not? Is it just, like, this is like Theseus' ship all over again, right? So the idea that if you replace every part of a ship, is it still the same ship? Or does it become a new ship? If you replace every physical part of a human being, are they still the same human being? So this is something I expect will be explored very deeply here, along with the idea of making a being and exploring the controlling free will of said being. How will that all take shape in this arc? I expect those to be some of the biggest themes that's going on, but also related to the One Piece itself and what it is. There's times where Luffy even brought up in, I think, episode 400, where they are talking to Rayleigh on Sabaody, and, Usopp brings up the idea like, oh, well, if you know about the One Piece, you might as well fill us in because that would be really helpful. And Luffy, obviously stops him, says, don't tell me that. But he also brings up something very interesting. He says, I don't even want to know if it's real or not. So the idea of the One Piece having to do with your perception of it being real. One person could maybe reach Laugh-Tale and be like, oh, the treasure was not real all along. And another person could come to One Piece, the Laugh-Tale and be like, no, the One Piece is real. And I'm not talking in the sense of like friendship and not friendship. I'm talking about in the sense of something very like mind-boggling and up to personal interpretation as to what the One Piece is in reality. This could deal with that, right? If we find out the One Piece is not something as simple as that, of course there will be treasure. That is not going to be up to reality or not, right? There could be something to do with the One Piece that's up to personal interpretation of whether it has been real all this time or it hasn't been real. So I expect this to be a very important arc. I expect Kuma to come back. At least for now, unless we get something else, this seems like what is going on. Kuma returning as a Seraphim because, as we know, Vegapunk doesn't make mistakes. Vegapunk just has high standards. And no one can tell Vegapunk that their creation is faulty unless it's Vegapunk, right? So, tell me what you think. Tell me how you feel. Do you think Kuma's back? Do you think that this is something else? Do you have any ideas what else it could be if it's not Kuma's return into the story? And why else Oda would have people talk about him coming back to his right mind for so long if this was just going to go nowhere? As always, guys, please like the video if you like the video. Subscribe for more content like this. If you know someone who needs to hear the truth, Kuma's return, the Seraphims, and the idea of free will and what is reality for a person, share this video with them. If you have time, watch my other videos. If not, thank you for watching this video to the end. This is King Gazy, and I'll see you in the next one.